So, today's title was Evidence,
Yes,
Experience, and Empathy.
experience.
And
Yes,
unfortunately, can we have the slides up?
yeah,
In COVID science, it's an evolving science, and COVID science is not even a month old. So it's a pandemic. What is a pandemic? That means there are too many diseases. Is it a case demic? What is a case demic? That means there are explosion of cases. Are they real? Probably they are. And there is an infodemic. So the only thing which we know correct about the COVID virus is that it's predictably unpredictable. So that's one fact which we know for sure. So next slide. Uh, and then the first question is, are we testing too much or are we testing too little? Should we test the whole India, whole world? Should the testing be symptom based? Because we know in Wuhan city, they have tested the whole Wuhan city now, which is the ground zero of Earth. What is the testing threshold? What is the infectiveness of the particle? So, a couple of things we need to understand, all of us as lay people and as doctors, that ICMR has put up the cycle threshold value for RT-PCR testing, which is the gold standard, as 40. But remember, the COVID virus particle only becomes infective and can damage the body to a great extent when the viral load is less than 24. But this is a research tool. So remember that this is a big question. So any patient who has been called COVID positive between a viral load of 24 and 40, is it just a overrepresentation of a positive particulate cases which do not have infectivity, and which is why we have a large population of the planet Earth which is exposed but is silent and does not have any symptoms. So that's a $1 million question. And who dies due to COVID? People, previous slide please. People who die due to COVID are the ones who have the vulnerability score. So if they are aged above 50 or they have comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, they are the ones who die. Next slide. So the other question is, will everybody progress? How to detect progressors? What are the basics of COVID where there is no dispute? The only basics of COVID where there is no dispute is once the test is positive, you need to do contact tracing to every person you came in contact with, and you need to self isolate. So at the first symptom or the first suspicion that you have been exposed to a person with COVID virus, you should isolate. And that is something we should do as a responsible citizen. And then probably try to track down all the individuals you came in touch with and do appropriate tests. And if the test is positive, do treat and care. Okay. Who will progress? How to detect progressors? Well, if you have comorbidities, if you are elderly, you will progress. But the best thing to do is buy a pulse oximeter at home, do a 6-minute walk test. If there is desaturation, then you are in trouble. Even if you don't want to do any blood test or anything else, but that's something which you can do. And remember, COVID, this part of COVID can last for 1 to 2 weeks. So 2 weeks you have to be vigilant. And if you get COVID, you have to be careful for 90 days. So those two things we know very clearly. Next slide. What works in COVID? That's the $1 million question. Okay. What works in early COVID? Probably nothing works in early COVID. Even if you don't treat, it will still do well. What works in middle of the COVID? Probably there are some antiviral drugs, some immunological drugs which may work. Steroids are the only ones which have been shown with oxygen and supportive care, they may work. And in late COVID, only dexamethasone has worked. Everything else has been experimental. So unfortunately, in COVID science, it's an empirical science where everything is under a research mode. Can we have the slides off, please? So everything in COVID is in a research mode. And because everything in COVID is in a research mode, we are understanding better. Because COVID came probably at the time when we are talking today, we are on 8th of November. At that time, it was in Wuhan. It was localized in that geography of Wuhan. And probably that is the time it had started spreading in Wuhan. And it took 6 to 8 weeks for Wuhan to declare that there is a viral pandemic or epidemic there. And it took the month of March for WHO to declare it as a pandemic there. So in COVID science, we have to be very rational, use clinical common sense, and do what is correct. On the testing front, 3 tests. RT-PCR is the gold standard. 70% positive, 30% it may be negative. Antigen test, 50% positive, 50% could be negative. If antigen test is negative, then you need to follow up the patient for 7 to 14 days. If antigen test is negative, RT-PCR test is negative, yet the patient has suspicion he has COVID or she has COVID, and patient has probably symptoms, then you need to repeat the test after 5 days or do an HRCT, high resolution CT scan, because CT scan is sensitive in 85% of cases. Today is the World Radiographers Day. Do a CT scan. That's something which we can do. So that's something which we need to recognize. So on the testing front, that is what it is. If you have a doubt, treat it as COVID, as suspect COVID. Don't keep waiting, because and the simplest test on COVID is a 6-minute walk test with a pulse oximeter. That's very, very crucial. Isolate yourself, protect other people around you. It is always better to err on the safer side, and be connected with a doctor. Being connected with a doctor is so crucial, because if you do and see our show and manage your COVID and do home isolation, I don't think that's the right thing to do. Be connected with some healthcare provider who will give you some guidance how to appropriate it. And if you are into that high risk group, if that means if you are above 50, if you have hypertension, if you have diabetes, if you have heart disease, if you have any disease, okay, I would keep it very simple. If you have any disease, then it is all the more necessary that don't do it. Isolation at home is tough, and therefore, if you can't handle isolation at home, just go to a corona care facility or get admitted to a hospital, and it's easier to manage it there, because then you can give it to somebody else. Because you see, there is so much of mental anguish also which comes in. But remember, that's something which we need to do. So I think I'll stop here. I'll be happy to answer a question or two, but I think this is very, very important, that COVID science is emerging science.
Yeah.
What is true today may not be true tomorrow. Maybe a little later, Anirudh, we will take various drugs, and which
Yes.
drugs work in
Yeah, a lot
mild
of people
COVID,
are
moderate COVID,
asking.
and severe COVID.
Yeah.
That's what we will do a little later. But
Yeah.
I think it's very, very important to recognize and people to understand that what was working and what we thought was working in March may not be working in November. And what we think is working in November may not be there on our treatment protocol in January or February. This is how fast the science has changed. Okay. But remember one thing, we are approaching winter. Exactly 120 years back, we had the Spanish flu, and in Spanish flu, only in India, in the second wave, 1 crore people died when the
Hmm.
population of India was 22 crores. So we lost 1 crore Indians in the Spanish flu pandemic, which is a very large number
Hmm.
in 22 crore Indians then. Imagine that we have to prevent the second peak. And to prevent the second peak, we need our citizens to be very, very COVID appropriate. It is not just masking, it's not just sanitization, it's not just distancing. It's important to avoid crowded environment, poorly ventilated spaces, and COVID appropriate habits, which means eat on time, eat the right food, sleep for 8 hours. And at the end of the day, your immunity is built by your mind and what you think. And that is why I'm again going back to Guru Anna, that to build good immunity, you need not only good sleep, and to get good sleep, you need to have a positive frame of mind. Guru Anna, it's very, very important to get that positive frame of mind. And without that, we just can't conquer COVID. And also to behave appropriately, we need our mind to be in the right place. Because if our behavior is not appropriate, COVID is not going to stop. So the only way we can stop COVID is we need people like Guru Anna with their Guru Killi, and that Guru Killi is the Guru key to wire the mind and shut it off, so that we behave appropriately and not recklessly, and we behave responsibly and not irresponsibly. Anna.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Dr.
I'm
Shetty.
so happy to see Dr. Joshi. Dr. Joshi, I'm so happy to see Dr. Joshi, who was an endocrinologist, now he's become a COVIDologist and slowly is becoming a psychiatrist and a psychologist. I'm happy to see that I can infect others with my subject. I'm really happy to see. Yes, yes, Anirudh.
Yeah, the next question I have is from Advocate Amit Dubey. He says, I live in a small house. Three of my neighbors were hospitalized. I did so much for them, but I did not even hear a thank you from anyone. I feel sad.
Uh, Before answering the question, there are three issues. What is empathy and what is apathy?
Hmm.
And that is something which is very important. There was one gentleman, Anirudh and Shashank, who found it so satisfying to go and help others. But when he did not find anybody to help, he used to get very depressed. And when I checked him out, people said, "Bahut acha aadmi hai, is really helping others." But he was very depressed when he could not help anybody, when there was nobody to be helped. This is not empathy. when people are stressed, they block their stress, they don't deal with the stress and are dependent on altruistic behavior. They're very dependent on, I am the only person that can help him. And it's me, it's me, it's me. That is not empathy at all. That is, you are not able to face your own life. You're supposed to deal with your stress. And this cannot be a distraction and a diversion all the time. And if you're so dependent on wanting to help somebody, it is something which you need to actually deal with. Now, my dear Mr. Dubey, Advocate Saab, Namaskar. What is very important for you is that you honestly, very genuinely has helped everybody. Honestly and very genuinely you have helped everybody. And I would, on behalf of 1MD and Dr. Shashank, my dear friend, my dear brother, and Anirudh, again my dear brother, we thank you for doing this. But क्या है, प्रशंसा प्रभु को भी प्यारी होती है, and that is a fact. But remember one thing, and listen to this beautiful quote by none other than Dr. Harish Shetty. Listen to this carefully, my dear friends. Life is like a coco game, moving around in circles, not knowing who will touch you when. When you play coco, you don't expect the person whom you have given code to come around and really give you code. Somebody else will come. So you are adding to the list of your good deeds, not because you expect somebody to come and really help you, but the point is, when you did all that for your neighbors, your heart opened, your hug size improved, your mental health actually was better than what it was. And as Dr. Shashank says, you have improved your immunity quotient. Empathy improves immunity by very complex mechanisms. So don't be so dependent on what they would say. I'm not saying that they're not grateful. They would be really grateful from within. And some people do not know how to express gratitude due to social anxiety, due to so many other reasons. And some people after recovery may be so overwhelmed that they would not be in a state to say thank you. And so, congratulations. Let your heart be as open as it was, and let many others, apart from your close family, learn and be infected by what you did for your neighbors. And apathy. Again, I would like to say a little more about apathy. If Anirudh gives me 30 seconds,
Yeah.
country wants to know. When somebody does not feel like doing anything, people call them self centered. Well, remember one thing, all of us are self preserving, and that is a normal trait which human beings have. I still remember that incident in Kandla where a lady said after the cyclone there was flood and she had four children. She held three children in her arms and had to leave the fourth. And while she saw the fourth leaving aside and going away in the floods, that image haunted her for so long, and we took a long time to really help her. So in when people are very anxious and very self-preserving, they may appear very apathetic. When people's soul has not been lit by moving experiences, or the family environment have been such that go straight and come back straight. If anybody falls in the road, it's not your job. Please do not interfere in anybody's life. If that is where you might become apathetic. Somebody who's very depressed might appear very stoned and apathetic. And somebody who's not been touched or who has not been aware that he has been touched may become apathetic. And lastly, when you're not aware of your feelings, and if you have been dehumanized by a job, which could be in the mortuary, which could be in the law enforcing agencies, it could be anywhere. And if you have been exposed to dehumanizing experiences, you need to actually be exposed to humanizing experience to move from apathy to empathy. So a lot of people who are dry may have problems which may have to be answered and rectified to bring them back to the empathy movement. Thank you for your kindness, Anirudh,
Yeah.
for allowing me to use one minute more than what I should have been.
Dr. Joshi
So
wants to.
very quickly, Dubeji, thank you so much. Please don't expect anything from anybody in life. That's the message which probably you have learned. And I am telling you that I want to thank you for what you did. And I think that should get you a closure on this. Don't feel sad. Be happy. Have a nice Sunday. We have thanked you. You don't need others to thank you. Remember one lesson in life, that never have any expectations from anybody. If you start learning that and living that as an experience, you will be much more happier and never sad. Sadness is not something which, I'm not an expert in mind health, Dr. Shetty is, but I just wanted from with my folded hands to thank you for what you did. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Dr. Joshi, the next question is actually for you regarding the tests. Actually, we've got quite a lot of questions regarding people testing negative, and so what we actually want is for you to actually explain all of the antibody and antigen tests and uh, how they actually work.
So let
So
me take the question which you put up here, and that's a very,
yes.
very important question. I think, people say that they have tested negative, they have all the symptoms, and we can't give remdesivir unless and until the RT-PCR is not positive. So I think let's face this. A lot of people will have all the florid COVID-like illness. It's called as SARI,
Mhm.
severe respiratory infection. And in this SARI, severe acute respiratory infections, which are COVID-like, and if you do a HRCT and if your CORAD score is more than 6, you can actually even give remdesivir. So there is nothing which prevents it. Now, whether that remdesivir will work or not, we don't know. What will work in COVID, okay, is highly individualized.
Right.
But we know a couple of directions. We know a pattern. We know a standard of care, and we know that standard of care is a changing standard of care. So I think in COVID care, even if you get symptoms but your RT-PCR is negative but your CT is positive, we need to treat under the supervision of a doctor. And if your lung is showing some major disease, you need to be just treated the way they would treat it. Actually, we don't need a RT-PCR test inside the hospital to treat COVID. We will follow a protocol, and that protocol is dictated by biomarkers, it's dictated by the oxygen saturation, it is dictated by arterial blood gases. So it is determined by so many other factors. So if somebody has a RT-PCR negative but needs remdesivir and the doctor feels remdesivir has to be given, it should be given. Okay, that's something very, very important. So let us put up a few slides, Anirudh, and let me educate the science of COVID, how it is predictably
Yeah.
unpredictable, and what do we know about it. This is the cell. Every cell of our body is hijacked by the COVID virus, and it docks into a receptor called ACE2 receptor, and it makes that cell, it conquers the cell. It's like a invading army which conquers the lung cell, the blood cell, the body cells, and it takes over. It hijacks. It's like a hijack of the lung. It's the hijack of the heart, and it hijacks it and makes that cell make more COVID viruses. Next slide. And what happens is the active viral multiplication is occurring when we don't know we have COVID. It is 1 or 2 weeks before we get symptoms of COVID. The virus is very rapidly multiplying, and that is the time, if it spreads, you can get the disease. And that is why it's a very contagious virus. The R naught is almost 3. Next slide. And then we get antibodies. So the first antibody is the IgM. So the first antibody which we get is IgM, and then we have a myriad of IgG antibodies. So the first week, the antibody which is made, which is trying to destroy the virus, is called as the M antibody, and that is mounting an attack. And the G antibody is grounded antibody, which is going to be there a little later, and that's how the antibodies are reacting. Next slide. So obviously our immunity has to fight. Our body has very good immune cells, like the T helper cells, which make these chemicals which destroy the virus, the T regulatory cells, the cells which make CTL, which is cytotoxic T lymphocytes, and then they make these chemicals called antibodies. And whatever is being exposed to our body gets memorized by the body. And that is the principle on which vaccine will be done. So they will mimic whatever is there, like the corona structure, and the vaccine is injected, and then whenever there's a coronavirus infection, the body's already developed an immune response for it. Next slide. So obviously what is happening with COVID is the lungs are the prime target. So the lung air cells called alveoli are damaged, and there is a lot of clots called microthrombi inside the lungs. Next slide. So COVID damage, and COVID is all about a sticky, it's like firecracker time is coming. I'm sure there will be questions related to Diwali. So what COVID does and the virus does is it triggers the immunology. and it is like an atom bomb which triggers our blood clots, thrombosis, and inflammation. And it's all about thromboinflammation. Next slide. So a lot of drugs get targeted. We try to attack different pathways of drugs, and these are all repurposed drugs. A drug which was used for malaria, like chloroquine, a drug which is used for parasites, like ivermectin, a drug which is used for Ebola, like remdesivir, a drug which is used for Japanese flu, like favipiravir. These are all being used. They are trying to attack sites of viral replication, viral formation at different pathways. And then we use antibodies, which are artificially made, like monoclonal antibodies, itolizumab, tocilizumab, all these drugs, steroids. We are trying to mimic them. These are all repurposed drugs. Next slide. So, can we prevent COVID? Because people like doctors, policemen, workers in the municipal corporation, they are exposed all the time. Drivers who are driving, they are exposed all the time. Can we give them prophylaxis? And there is some data to show hydroxychloroquine to close contacts or healthcare professionals has been used. It has not been very greatly successful. Data on hydroxychloroquine is very controversial. There is ongoing data to show ivermectin may be used, but both are experimental drugs. So there is no standard of care there. Both are ICMR recommends currently hydroxychloroquine, but hydroxychloroquine can have heart effects, and it's not a standard of care. But ivermectin is also under research. The Uttar Pradesh government recommends it. So remember, prophylaxis to prevent corona, and that can be given by lay people. It's only to people who are close contacts with COVID patients or people who are likely to be seeing COVID patients all the time, like doctors, nurses, or police forces. They might be considered for either hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis or ivermectin prophylaxis. The asymptomatic phase needs no treatment. When you get symptoms in the first 9 days, the virus is multiplying. You need antiviral drugs, whether it's oral favipiravir or injectable remdesivir, have the best bet, but evidence-based doesn't show it saves life. And then we have steroids and immunomodulated drugs, and in between we have oxygen. Next slide. So COVID has 3 stages. Stage 1, when there is active virus, a little bit of dry cough, fever, diarrhea, and headache, light headache. And this is where the red cell width, if it is more than 14.5, if the neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio is abnormal, you will go to stage 2. Most people go in stage 1 and they recover. But some people, their saturation will come down, they'll get short of breath, they'll get this happy hypoxia, and then they will mount, the body will kill itself. See, what is happening in COVID is the virus itself is not killing us. It is the virus which triggers a very, very exaggerated immunological and inflammatory response, which is actually hurting our lungs or our heart or our blood. And that is what is killing us. And that is what doctors are trying to do. They are trying to work in stage 1. They are trying to develop drugs for stage 2A, stage 2B, and stage 3. For example, President Trump now has lost, but they tried to catch him in stage 1 going to stage 2A. And they gave him all the lytic cocktail, the antibodies, the remdesivir, the steroids, so that his progression from 2A to 2B and 3 was prevented. And he could still campaign, though he lost, but he could still campaign. Next slide. So obviously timing is the key for these drugs. In the first 3 days, we give oral antivirals like favipiravir. They are experimental again. In the day 4 to day 10, it could be oral or injectable antivirals like remdesivir or favipiravir. Some people give steroids injectably like methylprednisolone. Some people give dexamethasone. We give aspirin. Some people give low molecular heparins based on D-dimer. If there is a lung exposure threatening, oxygen saturation is going down, we give nasal oxygen, high flow nasal oxygen, prone positioning, and we sometimes give drugs like itolizumab or tocilizumab. And then, of course, we can have these unknown, unproven therapies on compassionate grounds like plasma, hyperbaric oxygen, statins, aspirin, insulin, gliptins, and nutrition is the key. So this is all about COVID care. And I will come back to the mild, moderate, severe variants, what drug to give how later. But I think, Anirudh, it's important to recognize that COVID care is the right drug at the right time, in the right case, for that given case, under medical supervision, what is available, what is accessible for that given case. For example, in India, I might have favipiravir, I might have doxycycline, ivermectin, I might have plasma. If I go to Belgium, I may not have all that. If I go to United States, I might have something else. So the doctor has to take a decision, and it's a shared decision making between the doctor and the patient in COVID care. But it's all about preventing the person deteriorating and avoiding that ventilator. So it's all about prone position. It's all about simple things. For example, how do we save lives in COVID? Okay, when they are desaturating and they are having this high flow nasal oxygen, we try to give them a bedpan, because we have seen most deaths occurred between 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning. And when they went to the toilet, and when they had to walk up to the toilet, when they were removing their oxygen, that is the time they desaturated and they died. So these are simple things which have to be done in COVID care. It's all about nursing, supportive care, oxygen care, prone positioning, and improving our lungs. And that really gets me to a question, that if we follow basic good COVID appropriate habits, if we do pranayama, build our lung compliance, okay, build our immunity, good sleep, we will be able to manage COVID better. Remember, at some point of time, we are all going to get exposed to the virus. Be ready for that reality. Don't get fearful about that reality. Don't get paranoid about that reality, but be realistic that if by mistake you do have an exposure, we need to be geared up for that. So have the right nutrition, right habits, so that you can handle the virus better. That's where I think I'll stop. But if there are one or two very quick questions, if you want me to answer in rapid fire, I'll do that. And then, of course, we'll pass it on to Anna.
Yeah, so basically, Derek Simon has asked, has Corona ever satisfied the criteria for cautious postulates?
Probably yes. But as I said, this is a area under research, and probably SARS-CoV-2 has satisfied those postulates. Having said that, as I said, is it man-made, or is it an accidental spillover, or is it a natural spillover? I think it's most likely an accidental spillover from wildlife using an intermediate host called pangolins, which is one of the most abused species on planet Earth, into human beings. Whether it was a biological accident or whether it was a man-made accident is an unknown question. And I'm certain that that will be scrutinized in times to come, and we will have data as time emerges.
There's a lot of questions regarding different medicines. Should we take that right now, or should we take that later?
One or two questions we can take if you wish.
Dr. Virendra Goyal is saying it's said that favipiravir and remdesivir don't work after 10 days. That is once the virus is dead. What's your say on it?
That's pretty true, Dr. Goyal, that once the virus is the replication of the virus is gone, it hardly works. So it doesn't really make common sense to do that. And similarly, plasma, when the plasma works best in the first 10 days of actively multiplying. But all this is based on a presumption which CDC has put out. So somebody might have an actively multiplying virus on day 12, day 14 also. This is a generalized presumption based on the data generated, on the science generated. So for an individual case, if an individual doctor is giving it on day 14, there has to be some biological rationale for it. And remember, whatever we are doing in COVID is predominantly experimental science, based on some directionality, based on protocols on expert opinion, and not on protocols based on hard RCTs. That level A evidence and level 1 recommendation is yet to emerge, and that might take a couple of years. But that happens with any disease. This is a new disease, which is not even a year old. It's like a small infant when it comes to all these other big diseases. For example, depression is the world's number 2 disease or the world's number 1 disease, or dental caries. I think dental caries and depression compete. Now, depression has been described for more than 300 years, while COVID is not even a year old.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Joshi. Dr. Shetty, the next question is for you. I'm just gonna flash. Dr. Amit Ghosh is watching the show from the US. Late for him. He's saying, "Be like a tree, give shade to travelers, and keep doing. Look out for the next traveler to help." It's a beautiful quote, Dr. Ghosh. And the next question, Dr. Shetty, I have is. I was discharged. It's from Sachin Paul from Pune. He's saying, I was discharged yesterday from the hospital. My wife was in quarantine. My parents also recovered a week ago. I'm not able to talk nicely to anyone, and my parents are also very angry. Is this due to COVID?
I think this is a very good question. Thank you, Professor Amit Ghosh, for that beautiful quote. And every doctor, every human being should be like a tree, and people would come and go and see that your leaves give shade and the breeze stops the tree stops the breeze so that the travelers would actually absorb it. What is very important here is that we also need to understand the terms apathy, empathy, apathy, and antipathy. And antipathy is also a very important term. I would request everybody to understand that empathy is an evolving phenomenon. It's not about abhi mein full 100% empathy hoga. Nahin. It's evolving.
Right.
It goes up and down. Religion also plays an important part. Culture and race also play an important part. And sometimes, remember, empathy is also about staying away from toxic people, staying away from toxic conversations. People who have toxic conversations with you have this hook which they throw at you and provoke guilt, and you start saying that I want to be empathic to that person. I think I should be kind, I should be good. That is not empathy. Have empathy towards yourself. Stay away from toxic conversations. Be compassionate to yourself, and that is very, very important. At the same time, what is also very, very important is compassion and empathy is not about talking softly. Anger is also compassion. If a father is angry over a child because he's not wearing a mask when he's going out, that is compassion. Compassion is not about, I feel very upset that you're not wearing a mask. Compassion is, I'm extremely angry in spite of my education, and that is compassion. That's also empathy. So, anger is also at times very required, and that's also empathy. Having said that, what is very important for us to understand is compassion is empathy in action. But action may not be physical action. Action might start inside your soul, inside your heart. Empathy is the Gangotri. Compassion is the Ganga. Empathy is the seed. Compassion is the tree that gives the shade. And that's what Dr. Amit Ghosh just said. Empathy is the kindling of the heart. Compassion is the fountain of the mind, heart, and soul. Empathy is a dot, and compassion is a line. Now, I would say that if this gentleman whose
Mr.
entire
Sachin
family
Paul.
has been
Yeah.
affected, Mr. Sachin Paul, doesn't feel like sharing what he wanted to share with his parents, and his parents are very upset by it. It
Yeah.
could be post COVID, you might be a little irritable. Post COVID, you might be actually a little anxious. Post COVID, you might be a little depressed. Post COVID, you might have a lot of physical pain, which stops you from being compassionate to your parents because you're taking care of yourself. I still remember an incident. I refused to go to a marriage because I felt that the social distance was not maintained. And if I've done that, I'm compassionate towards myself, and I'm practice empathy towards my own self, and that is important. So I would request him to go back to his own doctor, see if he can manage his pain inside his body, manage anxiety inside himself, or he could manage his mood. Or sometimes COVID survivors don't sleep at all. You can't be empathic when you are stressed, when you are burning out, and when you don't sleep at all. So he needs to go and check what is happening. Same time, the doctor who has treated all of them should also educate the elderly relatives that his son is probably going through some amount of pain, both in the mind or the body, and his ability to emote, ability to express feelings may be hindered, may be blocked, and that is why this is what you're seeing. At times, the doctor temporarily replaces the close relative, and when he shows empathy in place of his own relative temporarily, that empathy can also be helped. Also, what is very important is antipathy. Now, what is antipathy? Antipathy is very good. He died. Very good that the entire family has had COVID. They have not paid the dues of my building for so long. They have troubled everybody in their life, and God has punished them. Antipathy will destroy your empathy. Antipathy will hurt you very badly. And remember, here I would like to share a story between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore in the year 1930s. When Bihar had a severe earthquake, Mahatma Gandhi said that this is due to the atrocities committed by the upper caste or the lower caste, wherein Rabindranath Tagore, like Dr. Shashank Joshi, said, let us look at science to analyze and solve the problems. Having said that, antipathy also can come because of a lot of hate inside your heart, because of your experience in life. And if your anger has been converted into resentment, hostility, and hate, you can never feel the pain, or you can never sense the feelings and the thoughts of the person other than you, which is extremely essential for being empathetic. Here, I would like to say that intense hate somewhere will interfere with love everywhere. So those who feel nice when somebody is suffering, those who feel nice when somebody goes down, those who feel nice when the entire family is affected by COVID, and do not have a small sense of sadness, stress, and pain, are not destroying those who have been hospitalized, but you are destroying yourself. Intense hate anywhere will interfere with love everywhere, which means intense hate against your professor will not allow you to be friendly with your peers. Intense hate against any member of the family will not allow you to really love others. Intense hate against your spouse will stop you from loving your own children. And that is important. So, those who want to learn about empathy and read about it also read about apathy and antipathy. And that is very, very important.
Thank you so much for such a detailed explanation, Dr. Shetty. Dr. Joshi, the next question is actually, can 10 days be taken as, the number of days for infection to go away in COVID for home isolation? So if somebody is just in doubt about COVID and they have isolated themselves at home for 10 days, can they step out on the 11th for sure?
So if you are asymptomatic, you're COVID positive, after 10 days, you're unlikely to be infective to others.
Okay.
So that is how the situation is. If you go to other countries, they allow you to even move out. I would say that 2 weeks you should stay home because COVID needs some amount of rest, and that's something which is very important to recognize. But after day 10, if there's an impending emergency or a compelling need for you to move out, it's okay. You're unlikely to infect if you are asymptomatic, but ensure that you are well masked. And in a COVID case, it is better to wear an N95 mask or a 3-ply mask, not a regular cloth mask. See, remember, when you are looking at and your close contacts also need to use an N95 mask. Because a lot of people ask me a lot of questions about masking. So in a COVID case, who wants to move out, even within their own house, always eat alone. Okay, don't eat in front of others. Okay, toilet is a big spreader space. So ensure that you use your own toilet. If there's a single toilet, ensure that it's decontaminated all the time. And when you keep that mask, keep it in a receptacle which is appropriate and correct. So these small things are hugely important.
Okay. The next question is again from Dr. Virendra Goel. Please elaborate role of famotidine, cetirizine, colchicine, melatonin in moderate COVID.
So famotidine is a completely experimental drug. It's like a H2 blocker. It has no data, but it has emerging science and has been used in COVID care, but doesn't really have any sustains. It's not in major protocols. But if you have to use a H2 blocker or a proton pump inhibitor as an acidity pill, one can use famotidine. It has a lot of drug interactions. Cetirizine probably doesn't have much of a role, but montelukast has some role. Okay, so montelukast, there are some data, some studies, including studies which we are doing, which might have a role. Colchicine has some data which has been published, which has been there, which has been published in New England Journal of Medicine in COVID care, but it's not a standard of care protocol. These are all off target drugs. And melatonin 3 or 5 milligram is good to get good sleep. It can be used independent of COVID care, but it's not anti-COVID per se. And melatonin is to reprogram your biological clock, which is what Dr. Guru Nanna is trying to do, is that he's trying to reprogram your mind clock. He's trying to rekindle your emotional clock. This whole hate love business is nothing but an emotional clock where the pendulum can swing on extremes, and that's where melatonin can be a very good soother, for the biological time clock of our body. And there it allows you. So it's used basically by people who have jet lag, people who are shift workers, and in COVID, a lot of anxiety gets generated. So therefore, it has been used. But again, the data. If you ask me, is it a level 1 evidence? No. Is it a level 2 evidence? No. Is it experimental? Yes. Is it quasi experimental? No. It is emerging evidence. Some protocols use it. Like for example, University of Virginia protocol will use melatonin, famotidine. Okay. But will we use it in Maharashtra as a standard of care in our government of Maharashtra protocol? No, because we don't have that evidence. But in an individual case, if I feel I have to use melatonin or Melocet 3 milligrams, or I have to use famotidine, I will use it. I've used it also. So it has to be very individualized. Okay, it cannot be a generalized comment. Cetirizine, no. And again, it's more useful for mild COVID, Dr. Goel, not useful for moderate COVID. In moderate COVID, you need little better granular drugs.
Okay. The next question is from Devolina Mukherjee. Sir, good afternoon. I'm a medical physicist, and in radiotherapy department, we have cancer patients undergo RT treatment for 5 days in a week and continues for 4-5 weeks. And we screen for COVID for first day. So my question is whether we should repeat COVID test for all weeks.
Ideally, every week you should, because these are high risk cases and they can get COVID positive. So that and remdesivir makes a lot of difference in these cases. So the protocol is to repeat it every week, both for the workers as well as for the case.
Interesting. Okay. And Mr. Pradeep Sarvaiya, a different route of administration of antiviral drugs like remdesivir will make any difference, like nasopharyngeal spray for nasal throat COVID and inhaler in lung COVID?
Yes, nasal spray or inhalation therapeutics has a role in COVID care in early disease, not in late disease. So in early disease, if you give something from a nasal route, and a lot of trials are ongoing, it may make a difference, or an oral route. They have used a steroid called a cyclosinide inhaled in Japan and in some other parts, including India, where we are also doing a trial where it can make a difference. Similarly, inhaled remdesivir might have a role. But as I said, whether it really works is all experimental right now. So let us go to a couple of slides, Anirudh, and let's look, because a lot of people are asking detailed questions on drugs and what's the science on the drugs. So again, the science on the drugs doesn't have RCTs. Again, there is no level A evidence or level 1 evidence or recommendation. It's all expert opinion evidence, and that's what we know as of now in the therapy space. In the therapy space, what do we do if somebody's at home? Okay, usually we start them. Do we have the slides up?
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah.
So biomarkers are something which we need to do. Do we need to do them at home? Well, the two biomarkers we should routinely do are complete blood count and CRP. And in the complete blood count, look at the red cell width. If that is more than 14.5, contact your doctor and get into hospital. Or if your neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio is abnormal, contact a doctor and get into hospital. If your CRP is above 30, it's better that you get into hospital. Ferritin, troponin T, D-dimer, LDH are all extra tools. IL-6 and procalcitonin, we don't recommend to be done at home at all, because they can be very erroneous. When you transport the sample of IL-6, it can actually just move and the value can be abnormal. But if your complete blood count, simple CBC, which anybody can afford, and CRP are high, I think you should go to a doctor. Those are the biomarkers which we can do. And if ferritin and D-dimer, if it is high, then you need to be on anticoagulant. Next slide. Well, remdesivir still works, though Solidarity has a lot of limitations, and I wouldn't go into details of this slide. It is not a placebo-controlled, double-blinded trial. In recovery of COVID, remdesivir works for 5 days. Whether it saves lives, I think the answer is no. Next slide. So in mild COVID, everything is experimental. Okay, everything is experimental. Favipiravir is a drug which was used in Japan. Now the season will start. Why am I talking of favipiravir today? Because the season will start of flu, and this is where in 2015 in Japan it was discovered. Whether it is flu or whether it is COVID, we don't know. You give 8 tablets in the morning and night, and then 4 tablets in the morning and night for 14 days. It has shown that it clears the virus faster. Does it save lives? The answer is no. It clears the virus faster for sure. Best useful in the first 3 days. The more days later you use favipiravir, unlikely to work. higher is the viral load, the better the favipiravir will work. What about hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin? Does it work? Probably in mild cases it may work. Data is very conflicting. Moderate cases, severe cases, it doesn't work. But we need to monitor QT interval. What about doxycycline, ivermectin? We have done a trial, 100 milligram twice a day, ivermectin 12 milligram once a day, or BID if the weight is more than 70 kilograms for 5 days. Does it work? May work, again in mild cases, but in moderate cases or severe cases, we don't know. Off-label convalescent plasma may work in individualized cases. So in mild cases, it's probably either if you have comorbidities, favipiravir is a good option. Hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin was used in the past but not used anymore. Doxycycline, ivermectin has some role, but again, all this is experimental. We don't have any documentary proof to suggest that these drugs are standard of care or a level 1 evidence or a level A evidence. These are all experimental drugs. Among the level of evidences here, probably favipiravir clears the virus better. But even in that, Japan has the best data, followed by China, followed by Russia, and India, the data is still under publication. Should we give everybody vitamin C? Probably yes. We give them 500 milligram twice a day. Should we give everybody vitamin D? There's a MATS protocol, give 60K daily for 3 days, vitamin D, and you take care of the vitamin D stores. Zinc 50 milligram per day might help. Aspirin 75 milligram doesn't hurt. So that's what you will do for mild COVID. Next slide. In moderate COVID, favipiravir may work. If the patient is in the hospital, remdesivir may work, plasma may work. If the person needs oxygen and need prone position will work, high flow nasal oxygen will work. A heparin like enoxaparin 40 milligram IU may be required, and rarely you might need an IL-6 blocker like a itolizumab or tocilizumab. And in severe cases, next slide, that is the time patients need hospitalization. They need these immune blockers, monoclonal antibodies, mechanical ventilators, and sometimes we have to resort to ECMO and hyperbaric oxygen also. That's where the COVID care is. But the bigger problem is if the person is elderly or has comorbidities, next slide, then you need to be very aggressive. So do the 5 things. Measure the temperature. If the temperature is high and more than 101, it is going to be a challenge. Measure the pulse rate. If the pulse rate is more than 120, be careful and monitor the cardiac function. Measure the respiratory rate. If it is more than 30, then be careful. Measure the blood pressure. If it is high, treat it aggressively. Measure the glucose. If it is high, give IV insulin. That is how you treat COVID. Just do those 5 things correctly. The 5 vital signs are temperature, respiratory rate, blood pressure, glucose, and of course, you need to measure your pulse rate. Next slide. And then the bigger problem which comes in COVID is after COVID is over, after 2 to 3 weeks, many people are still breathless and may need overnight oxygen. That is lung fibrosis for you. You need to be connected. Many people might get a cardiac heart attack and they die suddenly at home if they don't take a low dose aspirin, statin, or an anticoagulant under medical supervision. They definitely need to see a counselor or a people like a team headed by Dr. Shetty for mental debriefing and handle the post-traumatic mental trauma. And a lot of them get fatigue. So nutrition is very critical. So you might need to use nutritional supplements often, and they need to follow up with a doctor. I think we'll stop the slides here. So Anirudh, it's all about clinical common sense, individualized care, and experimental science. No drug A or B is sacrosanct, but it's very, very important to recognize that prone position, yoga, respiratory physiotherapy is equally important. Mental health and sleep is equally important in recovery of COVID, and COVID is 90 days. The first 2 weeks are crucial, but full recovery of COVID is full 90 days. It's only after 90 days that one can say that one has fully recovered. You might have recovered from COVID, you might be asymptomatic, but you could still get a sinister complication maybe, particularly if you had mild, moderate or severe, or you were symptomatic. If you are asymptomatic with COVID, you're not going to get anything later. It's very unlikely. So that is where COVID care is. COVID care is an experimental zone. The level of evidence is emerging, except dexamethasone in a randomized controlled recovery trial, which has shown to show benefit on mortality. Nothing else has shown benefit. And in moderate to severe cases, it is oxygen, oxygen, oxygen. Prone means lying on the flat, and good lung care is what it matters. Giving aspirin, low molecular heparin definitely saves lives. And that's very, very crucial in COVID care. And monitoring them, whether at home or in hospital, is very crucial.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joshi. We have two quick questions for you. What if your fever has come down and reappears after a gap of 4 or 5 days? Is it revival of COVID? This is the question being
So,
asked.
so it could be revival of COVID or it could be a secondary infection. So under medical supervision, either you will have to start a small dose of antibiotic, which can often occur because the immunity is low, or if you have taken steroids, it could have often occur. So you might need to change your antimicrobial prescription, or sometimes many such patients who are at home, we hospitalize them and give them IV remdesivir. So if it's viral, we need antivirals. If it is antibiotics, if it is infective.
Okay. And the second question is from Dr. Banushali. He's asking regarding your slide of biomarkers. It's on what symptoms and on which day of infection does biomarker have to be tested?
CBC CRP should be done on day one. Rest of the biomarkers are not needed because they give you enough insights, and then you can repeat it every 3 or 5 days if required.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Joshi. Dr. Shetty, the next questions are for you. Um, Dr. Shetty, are you there?
I think he's hung up.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think we just lost him. Dr. Amit Ghosh is asking, agree, we have started seeing COVID and post-COVID cases. In others, post-COVID is adding to the list of new diseases and requiring outpatient and
That's very
multidisciplinary
true. So
management.
we are actually seeing a lot of non-COVID work also now. And
Okay.
also remember, COVID can mimic non-COVID symptoms. For example, a heart attack could be COVID, the first symptom. A stroke could be COVID. A very bad high glucose could be COVID. So any
Right.
of these symptoms could be COVID. Dr. Shetty is back. So I think now Dr. Shetty is
Yes.
connected. You can ask
Yes.
him the questions.
Yes. Dr. Shetty, hello. You're on mute, Dr. Shetty.
Yes, yes,
There are
yes,
two
yes, yes.
questions for you. First question is, I'm the chairman. This is retired Colonel Charanjit Singh from Gurgaon. He's asking, I'm the chairman of the entire housing complex. I'm helping around 450 households. I'm consistently busy with all of the office meetings 24/7, and my family is complaining that I do not take care of them. So, what would you like to say to retired Colonel
I
Charanjit
think
Singh?
I think what is important, Colonel Saab, is uh, do not overestimate your fountain of compassion. Though I said that the fountain of compassion is like the Gangotri, but Gangotri also has its own limitations. You know that the ice in the Himalayas is melting fast in the Arctic Ocean also. So remember, there's something known as compassion fatigue, which is very, very important for us to understand. So as much as you feel responsible to take care of your entire society, and you feel happy because there's a lot of positive feedback, it's important that let others in your team also share your burden. And compassion need not be like the Hindi film hero in the old Hindi movies. So compassion fatigue needs to be prevented. And how do you do that? Well, all the many of my ICCU intensivists who are working around the clock, they just take a break for 2 days with their phones off. They also do a lot of things for themselves so that their emotional energy bank comes back to normal. Remember, for empathy and compassion, emotional energy has to be filled again and again. So the tap is in your hand. So it's important that you really, really take care of yourself, and then you'll find that you'll be able to take care of others much, much better. Also, very, very, very important for everybody to understand how to build our empathy is I still remember a long time ago, Roger Everett said that knowledge changes attitude and changes practice, that KAP model. But I would say I still remember the experiment which we conducted during the riots in Mumbai. I told the police commissioner to bring the rioters to a refugee camp where the victims were present. Existential exposures to the victims also improves empathy. I still remember that experiment after the World War, first or second, I don't remember. Those guys who bombed different places in Europe and in different parts of the world went and met the relatives of the victims who died in their bombing. So I think this sort of an existential interaction can actually move the most strongest and the hardest hearts. And so important exposure to sensitive stories, exposure to live sensitive events will help people to understand empathy much better. Also, what is very important is that compassion fatigue sometimes is not understood and accepted. In fact, I still remember the day when I went to to Marathwada, and I was escorting a psychologist, and I said, "Let's go to the camp at the earliest." And he said, "No, we'll have a food and we'll go to the camp." And he stopped on the side and had a beautiful omelette on the roadside dhaba at Latur, which is very tasty. And what I learned 38 years ago as a young student of psychiatry is that take care of yourself first, and then you'll find that your emotional energy bank is replenished and you'll be able to take care of thousands of people across life, and that is very important. So, compassion fatigue is something which is also very important for us to understand. It might stop your empathy, it might make you very irritable, extremely angry, and you might respond very rudely to those who actually need your compassion and need your empathy. I saw another question there. I don't recollect. It came in on a website.
Yeah.
Anirudh?
The one from Mayuri M. She's saying my close relative has yet to pay me 50,000 rupees since years. I'm angry and not talking to him. He has COVID and is currently admitted, and he has no money to buy his expensive medicines. Now I'm in two minds about whether to help him or not. Mayuri M has asked.
Well, Mayuri, there are mixed feelings. There's anger, there's sadness, there's a desire to help. See what overwhelms you and see what will give you peace after some time, and that I think will really help you to find a solution. But also what is very important is that as you help the person, you might re-establish your contact, and your avoidance because of anger may go away. And probably you might recover your money also, and that is not the reason by which you actually would go and help. There's one aspect here which is very important. A lot of people ask me, Anirudh, that we would want to give lakhs of rupees to this temple, we would want to give lakhs of rupees to this temple. I ask them one question, and which is very important in empathy research. Are you doing it because you're extremely guilty
Hmm.
about the fact that you have not paid your taxes, you have looted the country, you have done all the wrong practices? If your donation is based on guilt, it does not help your heart completely. But if your donation is based on remorse and regret, and it brings about some change inside you while you give that money, or while you share your wealth, and you tell yourself that I'll stop looting my family, I'll stop looting my country or my community, and I would want to change. And if that is also a change process, that's where I think the fountain of empathy will be actually rebuilt. And of course, what is very important is see that your emotional energy bank is completely always replenished by good acts, which you do not do only during the time of disaster, but peacetime empathy is important for disaster empathy to really emerge. You don't have to really run around a camp, a refugee camp, or hospitals only when there's something big happening. Start doing peacetime empathetic exercises where you show compassion to your neighbors, to your loved ones, to your family, and to others. And that I think is very important. Somebody asked here, I think it was Maina Devi. I forget that
Chaya
question.
Devi Mane, I think that's.
Uh, how
Dr.
will
Shetty, can I
I?
make a quick comment on this?
Yes.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Dr. Joshi.
So, this is a very common dilemma people have. We are in a connected world, and Dr. Shetty very nicely told compassion and charity. And you are in a dilemma that somebody you have loaned out with, and you should not have any expectation that anything will come back. And human behavior is human behavior. It's very difficult to make a transformation. So think that it is gone as charity, and then act appropriately what you feel will give you peace, as Dr. Shetty rightfully said. And do not have any expectations either of the first contribution you have made as a charity or of your second contribution. And if you feel that you are not in a position to make that second contribution, don't go into any guilt at all. Just pray, have good wishes, good karma, and good positivity, but be at peace. Don't be in dilemmas. Don't sit on the fence. Be happy, enjoy, and celebrate your life, but do not get into difficult situations. We all have a innate nerve of getting dragged into controversies, difficult situations. We need to understand how to negotiate and swim your mind out of all this. And that is why we have people like Guru Anna. Sorry, Guru Anna, you had to say something.
I confirm again that Dr. Shashank Joshi is also now becoming a good psychiatrist and a good psychologist. What is very important here also, Dr. Shashank, is that don't get into guilt is easy to say, but guilt comes, and accept it that it's coming. Accept it. Be aware of it. Be aware. Awareness of these difficult feelings is extremely important for us to actually resolve it. And I completely agree with Dr. Shashank that jo diya wo diya, gaya wo gaya. But for some people for whom at this point of time they would need the money, people ask money when they need it the most is extremely difficult. And Professor Amit Ghosh shares a beautiful sentence. Your biggest talent is also your biggest place to be, and I think that
get
that
in
is
trouble.
so to
Yeah,
really
that's
get
what
in
he says.
trouble. And that's a beautiful sentence. Maina Devi said it's very easy, sir, about antipathy, empathy, but how to get rid of this feeling? Never get rid of any feeling, my dear friends. Feelings are a mixed bag. It's not only about there's a saint who only loves people and there's a Satan who only hates people. No, everything is in a jumble. First is if you have very severe antipathy across a lot of people, first identify your stories of life. Life is full of stories. Problems are stories going wrong. Counseling is repair of the stories. And here, what is very important is there may be a story in your life which is very big, very unresolved, and it bounces back all the time when you're dealing with people. Find a place to heal the story by yourself, by your God, by your priest, or by a counselor, or by your psychiatrist. Sometimes depression by itself can cause you a lot of anger, irritability, and antipathy. Remember, depression is a very different illness. It's very devious, as devious as COVID. Some people might get very hostile and would have a lot of antipathy, would not be able to empathize with people with things happening around them. Treat it at the earliest. Number three, if it's your nature to complain about everything, to blame everybody around, find answers to your nature through your friendly neighborhood psychologist. And if it's also because of your physical conditions, Dr. Shashank will tell us, also due to your physical conditions that you cannot control your anger, your resentment, and your antipathy grows, it's important to really correct your physical conditions. I think that I think is extremely important. So always remember that the mixed bag of feelings inside your mind is constantly is evolving and changing. Awareness of feelings is one of the first step to increase your hug size as time passes, and you may actually I would want to share one experience in riot affected situations where people who have been hurt because of a riot come up and try to help a lot of other rioters, but so many of them have a lot of anger and antipathy against the other community. What is very important here is to move one step ahead, expose themselves to the pain of everybody across all communities, and then you'll find that your empathy has value. Empathy will have a lot of strength, and your hug size would slowly improve.
Thank you so
But
much.
in COVID care, there is no hugging.
Metaphorical hug size, my dear Dr.
Metaphorical.
Shashank, metaphorical
So
hug size.
I'm no, no, I'm just trying to liven the atmosphere, because all these things, this mind thing is very heavy,
Yeah.
so I said in COVID care we should be still appropriate, and no hugging, no touch technique. Hug is great for warmth, for compassion, for love, and I completely agree with you that it's a very strong connect, physical connect. But in COVID care, it's all no touch.
Absolutely, but I would say the mind business is very simple. It's about simplest things. The most complex is the number of medicines and the names of which we cannot actually remember. And but the mind business is very simple. Deal with simple things very gently. And as Dr. Shashank always says, and this also says, say if you're wrong, and apologize as and when it's absolutely necessary to heal yourself. And I think that's beautifully said.
Yeah. A lot of people are asking for post-COVID care and protocol. I think and they're saying that please do a separate session on that. A lot of
Absolutely, absolutely,
yes,
absolutely,
Yeah,
we
so
absolutely.
will definitely
post-COVID
do
care,
it.
I just want two things to be told to everybody because
Yeah,
we are going to be in the Diwali times,
yeah,
and Diwali time is a time of celebration, and people now have got tired mentally and physically of COVID, and discipline. So I think my only two simple tips are that we are approaching Diwali. Two things you need to be very careful of. One is food because there's going to be a lot of food for celebration. So
yeah,
taste the food, but don't eat too much. That's my
yeah,
first tip to everybody at Diwali. And try to do some charity because a lot of people have lost jobs. A lot of people don't have sources of livelihood. I really appeal to each one of you with folded hands that I am not a politician. I have no aspirations in politics, but I am telling you that every little bit of charity you will do to help somebody who's in need will go a long way to build our nation again. That's very, very crucial. And I think that's one thing which we can do for Diwali. The second is that if you eat too much, you are likely to get blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, and all those things. You should celebrate, you should taste. The second thing is that during celebratory times of Diwali, we learn to light the lamps. So we need to light the lamps. I'm not saying don't light the lamps. We need to probably burst some crackers, but burst them at home, be minimalistic, but don't pollute our environment. You can have a blue Diwali or a green Diwali, and I take this opportunity because I am the chairperson of the International Diabetes Federation for the Southeast Asia. That next week on the 14th is the World Diabetes Day. This year, like the World Health Day, is dedicated to the nurses who are taking care of our diabetics.
yeah.
And nurses have played a very pivotal role also in COVID care today. It's all nursing which has made all the difference in COVID recovery today. And therefore, we need to salute to our diabetic nurses who have taken care of our diabetics. But at the same time, the pollution which comes out during Diwali times can be mitigated and contained. I'm equally mindful that livelihoods of people who make firecrackers and the little joy it gives to the family people, to the small children of the house by bursting those crackers is equally important. So we need to do that light balancing act. I'm not good at balancing it so well, but my only humble tip is that in post COVID care, a lot of people who have recovered COVID can't still breathe well. The reason I got this post COVID care is lot of our brothers and sisters have had COVID. They are having post COVID lung fibrosis. The more crackers you will burst, more you will pollute the environment. You will make them difficult to breathe. So, do you want to burst a cracker at somebody else's lung cost and suffocate them? Do you really feel that that is the right thing to do? So I'm being emotive here, but I think it's important that we have a green Diwali. We have a Diwali where we light lamps, feed others, do some charity, and I think if we do not pollute the environment, we'll go a long way. Because I think a lot of people need to breathe fresh air, which is pollution free air, and breathing that air will aid recovery of our brothers and sisters who have suffered COVID. And there is a big silent exposed group. For every one person who has been diagnosed with COVID, probably at least 50 or 100 others have already gone through COVID. And we don't even know that that is there. And I completely agree with Sush Pawar when she said it's Children's Day, it's World Diabetes Day, it is also Diwali Day, it is a day of light, the day of wisdom, but it's important that we are mindful. And I think mindfulness is something which is very, very crucial for not polluting our environment so that we breathe well because we have to protect our environment and protect our lung environment. And that's very, very crucial. So in COVID care, my only suggestion to everybody is please don't burst excessive crackers. Do not overcrowd Even when you are meeting your near and dear ones, follow COVID appropriate behavior. At least eat and taste what you make, but don't overindulge. And draw your Lakshman Rekha appropriately with a lot of smile, lot of positivity, because you have another Diwali coming up right in a year's time, which will be probably COVID free. Let's wish for a COVID free Diwali next year. But this year, in this COVIDized Diwali, we need to be very, very cheerful and positive, but mindful that we need to have clean air, clean environment, and that is the only way we can make our people who have suffered from COVID and the brothers and sisters who have lung diseases, they can breathe better.
Absolutely, that's wonderfully said, Dr. Joshi. Dr. Shetty, any final comments?
Uh, I think what is very important is awareness improves empathy. Don't stop your journey of awareness. And each one in the audience should remember that each one has received love at some point of time in their life. Be aware of that across time. There's nobody on this earth who has not received love. As Professor Amit Ghosh also says the same thing. And if you are aware of that, your empathy will always be better. You'll be kinder to the world. Again, in charity, we have always appealed, and I've appealed here that every month, probably 1 kilogram of vegetables and 1 kilogram of rice a week to a family who needs it the most, with dignity and gratitude, without making selfies, without putting it on Facebook. That is very important. And let us read the life stories of great people on this earth. I would want to remind you of the great human beings, Anirudh, which you're going to put across. There's Mahavir, there's Buddha, there's Zoroaster, there's Jesus Christ, there is Guru Nanak, Jnaneshwar. I don't think you got the picture of Hamid Dalwai.
Yeah.
He's a great reformer. People do not know him, but he's a great guy, great man. And Gora Kumbhar, very few Maharashtrians know who's Gora Kumbhar. Jnaneshwar, Sautyamali, and also Dr. Hedgewar. I would, and many more. So when you read this life stories of people who have served humanity, there's a tingling in your heart, there's an awakening of the soul. Each one of us on this earth is compassionate. Many do not discover it in the lifetime. In the hubs, in the buzz of globalization, when you run, your heart stops, your heart closes, and you do not realize what's happening around you. Slow down, look around, and you'll find that your heart opens, kindness pours, and there's an infinite bounty of compassion which people would receive from you and which you would receive from yourself. Thank you.
Dr. Joshi, any final comments?
No, I think I want to wish everybody very happy Diwali,
He's giving a lot of
a
Diwali
clean
wishes
Diwali,
in the comments
a
as well.
healthy Diwali.
Yeah.
And I think remember that COVID science is emerging science. I am grateful to Guru Anna for allowing us to learn better on mind health, behave appropriately. We all are committed to prevent the second peak, and we already have a second or a third peak in Delhi. We wish that world is a cleaner and a better place to live. And I wish everybody a very happy Diwali. I wish everybody around here safe health. And I think that's what we have. We have many questions which are unanswered. We are definitely coming back next week. So a lot of people might think that we don't, COVID has no vacation, and COVID information and the infodemic and the case demic we are in needs myths which have to be busted. And our whole idea here with my Guru Anna is that we want to bust more and more myths, and we want to tell you some facts which can make a change. And I'm sure that each one of you is a change agent. Happy Diwali to everybody.
Happy Diwali to everybody. And thank you, Dr. Amit Ghosh, for joining at midnight from the United States of America. Thank you, Irene, who's awake in UK. Thank you, Zora, who's awake in Australia. And thank you, Captain Rajiv Gupta, who's in mid-seas, who's in the mid-seas and watching our show. Thanks, each one of you, for being here. Thanks you. Happy Diwali. And light the candle with your own hands Watching the lights causes visual delight. Lighting your lamp lights your heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Happy Diwali to everyone.